All right, guys. Well, we are obviously into the winter meetings. Things are getting a little crazy around baseball. Baseball is off season. I think especially this year, some money is seriously flying around. And the winter meetings not just about free agency, but about trades as well. Alex Anthopoulos is there, of course. The Braves have not been very active yet, but I want to take one more opportunity. This is going to be my last episode in terms of what the Braves might do. I think the rest of the offseason will be much more reaction to what the Braves have done. But I want to give you one more episode of some different winter meeting trade possibilities that I not necessarily am anticipating the Braves making, but I'm just going to give you guys hopefully some fun trades to think through. And, we'll see if the Braves do any of these. But I do think as the money is really flying around in free agency, I think it makes it less and less likely the Braves are going to go after any kind of big name. So if they're going to make big moves, I think it's going to be via trade. And so that's what we're going to get into in this episode. All right, guys. Well, let's get into it. Let's start with some Braves news. Obviously, the big news as of last night was that Max Fried is officially gone. He is no longer a Brave. I think most of us realistically saw this coming. I held out a small sliver of hope, but as free agency really got ramped up and the money just seems more and more inflated these days, it just seemed like a natural idea that Max Fried was gone. He ends up signing an 8-year, $218 million contract with the Yankees. That basically breaks down to $27 million a year. I don't know exactly how they'll structure it, but 8 years is the big number here. I think $27 million is pretty fair for Fried. I don't know that the Braves would have quite gone that high, but they certainly weren't going to go 8 years. Remember, Fried is 31 years old, so this is taking him into his year 39 season. So, they certainly weren't going to do that. We have all known Max Fried leaving was the most likely scenario. And just, again, looking at this contract, it highlights why he was not likely to return to the Braves. And the Yankees weren't, of course, the only team in on this. So there were probably multiple teams willing to give him 7. Maybe this is what got him to New York, was that 8th year. But the Braves, again, they were never going to go give Max Fried an 8-year contract. My bet is they probably, if they were making him an offer, would have been in the 5-year range, something like that. So good for Max, to get, this is his one big free agent contract, as he's this little bit of an older free agent. Signing with the Yankees likely means he's going to continue to pitch in big games, meaningful games throughout most of the remainder of his career, as long as the Yankees remain committed to winning, which I think they probably will be. Max has been one of the best Braves pitchers in the post Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz era for the Braves. His Game 6 performance, of course, in the 2021 World Series will live on forever for Braves fans. Max wasn't without his flaws. He could go out and be just dominant, and he had some of those starts this past year, but his inability to stay healthy, to be 100% when you really needed him in the big moments. I mean, it just happened in basically the last 2 years in the playoffs. It was just something I'm sure the Braves had in their minds. It was just a negative, a ding on him, but he had a lot of positives as well. So again, I think if all things were equal, the Braves, I'm sure, would really have wanted Max to come back, but they didn't extend him earlier. Why did they not? I mean, some of that is Max was somewhat inconsistent, both with performance and health, in his first few seasons with the Braves. And so I think that in of itself probably caused them to pump the brakes on giving Max, what they gave Strider. Of course, Strider ends up getting hurt too. So, you never know with pitchers, but I think that's part of the calculus with Max Fried. The reason they didn't give him an early extension, and of course, because he's the older free agent, the closer he got to free agency, I think the more likely it was that this was his one big shot to go out and get a big contract, and he was just going to do it. Everything Max said was, I mean, he's a class act. He loved being in Atlanta. You can tell in his last game pitching in Atlanta, he was pretty emotional, and that he basically knew that this was probably his last time pitching in a Braves uniform at Truist Park. So best wishes to Max. We got to move on as far as Braves fans go. It does stink. He's been one of my favorite Braves. Certainly nothing negative about Max Fried that you can say other than those occasional injuries that just took him out of some games. All right, so Alex Anthopoulos has arrived at the winter meetings. The reports are that the Braves, this is a fairly big, I think, thing. The Braves are willing to exceed the CBT threshold to improve their roster this offseason. We've talked about, and even in my last episode, I talked about, well, let's assume that the Braves are going to try to stay under that number, and we'll try to operate the offseason like that. So the fact that they're at least willing to go there doesn't mean they will go over the number, but, I just read into that as if the right deal and the right player comes about, that they're not going to hesitate to go over that number. So that's kind of exciting. I mean, there could be bigger things coming this offseason because of that. It has also been reported that Ronald Acuna and Spencer Strider will likely miss well into May. I don't know if this is necessarily surprising news, but the idea that this could be, them just not missing spring training, but well into the season, it does change, I'm sure, the Braves' plans in terms of a pitcher they have to go out and get or an outfielder they have to go out and get. And, of course, you also can't be certain that they're going to be operating at 100% once they do come back. Ronald might have to DH some like he did the first time he came back. Strider might be on an innings limit, and then their performance in and of themselves might not be super great. I mean, they're both missing spring training. You guys know, we've seen players, that matters. And a lot of times players really struggle to come back in their first few months because they miss spring training. So all that being said, the Braves have to be thinking through, we're going to have to add probably a starting pitcher and an outfielder. And that's basically the reports that have been coming out. So there was a report by Dave O'Brien, and it just sounds like a full-time outfielder is probably the number one priority for the Braves right now. Previous reports have stated that they prefer a lefty bat, but are ultimately looking for the best player. So I'm taking all that into account in this episode as I'm going to start evaluating some possible trades. I always assume the Braves, can find the better player in trade versus free agency. And again, I think this offseason is proving that out. Free agency is just so, inflated, bloated. I don't know what word you want to call it, but things are getting pretty crazy out there. I'm going to mention the Juan Soto signing briefly in a minute, but of course that has a part to play. But even before the Juan Soto signing, you had pitchers getting like Luis Severino, signing with the A's and for more money than anyone projected from him, like players like that. So everybody is costing a little bit more in free agency than I think was projected to begin with. So I just think that means the Braves are less likely to play in those waters. Doesn't mean they won't, but I think it's much less likely. All right, the last little piece of Braves news I wanted to talk about was Marcell Ozuna. A lot of people have made note of, there's a video that came out, I think it was on his Instagram, that just showed him working on his swing, and it looked like kind of coaching and helping some other guys, and he looked very in shape. And number one, I watched that video. He looked pretty good, but he's only about 2 months off of the season. How much better in shape can you get in 2 months? I guess a little bit, but I don't know what to make of that. I mean, it's good. I'm glad. It could be the opposite. He could have gained 30 pounds. So that's not the thing. Marcell, I think, is 34 years old. It's good that he seems to be in shape. So a lot of people are making, this, is he going to try to play in the outfield? And with Ronald's status, that makes some sense. If he's at least an option to play in the outfield, that would be a great thing for the Braves if they have to go down that road. I kind of will believe it when I see it. To me, that's like their backup plan, because as good of in shape as Marcell Ozuna can get, you guys, if you've seen him play, his arm is terrible. He had a shoulder injury, and it just totally zapped his ability to throw the baseball. And so even if he got to be a somewhat okay defensive outfielder, with which even if he was in better shape, I'm not sure he would get there. But even if you say he got there with that, his arm is a major liability in the outfield. So if they have to put him out there to keep his bat in the lineup when Ronald returns and has to DH or whatever, maybe they do that. But I'm sure it's not a long-term option for the Braves. But the fact that he seems to be in a little better shape is certainly positive. And maybe that is something the Braves are even asking him to do. Like, you might be playing in the outfield some this year, so you need to get ready for that potential. All right. I wanted to mention the free agents who are off the board that have been at least linked to the Braves in some way or kind of seemed like a good fit, just so that we all get them out of our minds if you haven't been following as closely. Obviously, I already mentioned Max Fried has gone to the Yankees. Nathan Eovaldi was, a lot of people kind of thought of him as a good replacement, especially for like a Charlie Morton type, kind of an upgrade to Morton on maybe a 2 or 3 year deal to the Braves. He goes back to the Rangers. Willie Adames, a lot of people were floating him as a big splash the Braves could make at the shortstop position. He was the top shortstop on the market. He goes to the Giants. Blake Trinan was a relief pitcher that a lot of people, I think, wanted to see in Atlanta, but he goes back to the Dodgers on a 2 year deal. Tyler O'Neill signs a 3 year deal with the Orioles. He is a big power bat, left fielder, right-handed hitter, big-time strikeouts, but big-time power as well. So he goes to the Orioles. And then Shane Bieber re-signs with the Guardians. Again, he's coming off of, I believe, Tommy John. So he stays with the Guardians. And that was kind of thought of as possibly being a value signing that the Braves could make. So all those guys are off the board. Again, we're still early in the winter meetings. So even by the time this video posts, some of the things I'm going to talk about, there could be more guys who've signed through free agency to other teams, and even some trades that are made. So I'll make that, it's a caveat here, guys. If you're watching this, this is very much a moving target. So please keep that in mind. So a few more off-season thoughts, and I'm going to get into the heart of the episode and give you guys some trade scenarios for the Braves. My first thought, again, is on Juan Soto. He signs this 15-year astronomical $765 million contract. Soto, look, Braves fans know Soto well from his time with the Nationals, particularly, but he is a generational hitter. He is, I think, probably, a top 3 hitter in baseball right now. If you put maybe Ohtani, Judge, and Juan Soto 1, 2, and 3, you could argue with that. Ronald 2 years ago was there. Hopefully he can get back to that. But Soto is not. He's a generational hitter, right? But I still say this is a gross overpay by the Mets. Now, the Mets owner is the wealthiest owner in all of baseball, and of course, he can pay him whatever he wants to pay him. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a wise decision long term for 15 years. Again, Juan Soto would be, 41, 42 years old by the end of this contract. I saw a funny meme that had Bartolo Colon as "This is Juan Soto in 2039. You guys might have seen that. Made me laugh. Okay, so 15 years from now, what does Juan Soto look like? What is he able to do physically? Even 10 years from now, projecting how someone is going to age, I think that's the problem with these super long-term deals. Braves fans know, Andrew Jones basically by age of 30 was done. Now, do I think that's going to be Juan Soto? No, he doesn't play the same style. Andrew Jones was diving all over the field, and I think that's one reason he aged so quickly. But the point is, everybody ages differently. Very often in baseball, you could be 34, 35 years old and basically be done. So, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen with Soto, but it could. It's just an unknown. All that being said, this is a larger contract than Shohei Ohtani got, and I think that's ridiculous to me, right? He's not Ohtani. Ohtani obviously pitches and can steal bases, and there's so much more value than just Ohtani's bat. And Soto is only a bat, right? He He is a below average fielder at best. He's really a pretty bad fielder. And when you're 26 and you're already a bad fielder, you're probably not gonna get any better there. He doesn't steal you any bases. He's just an elite bat, which is awesome. There's tremendous value to that. He also is not as marketable as Ohtani. Of course, Ohtani comes with basically all of Japan and all the marketing that comes about. And Soto's just not going to be that kind of dollar. So he's not going to be bringing in millions of dollars in merchandise as well. So, if Soto ages well and he just continues to hit well into his late 30s, then, you probably get the value or close to the value of what you're paying for in this massive deal. But otherwise, it could turn into one of those albatross contracts. Now, again, the Mets owner has tremendous money, so maybe it just doesn't even matter if he's carrying $50 million bad contract of Juan Soto when he's 38 years old. But it just doesn't seem like a great thing for baseball. So, again, the Soto signing to me, when it relates to the Braves, it highlights how smart the Braves have been in extending their players early. I think about this in terms of the Nationals. I have some friends who are Nationals fans. And, if they had extended Juan Soto early and extended, let's say Trey Turner and Bryce Harper, those are the guys they should have extended early and committed to. And they chose the wrong guys, right? They chose their pitchers, which are more volatile. And of course, we know it led to the Nationals having to do a total teardown and rebuild. But the Braves, I think, have chosen really wisely. Maybe they've learned from the Nationals' blunders. But here you have Soto. He's bounced around the league a little bit, and now he seems to be at home with the Mets, and the Braves are going to have to deal with Juan Soto apparently for the next 15 years. So that's going to be not a very fun thing to do. But the Mets still have a ton of work to do. Signing Soto in of itself, actually, I don't think gets them there at all. That Pete Alonso is gone. Some of these reclamation pitchers that they signed to 1 year's deals are gone. So we'll see if the Mets try to do anything else. Very thankfully, they didn't get Max Fried. And so I don't know if they're going to go after a big time pitcher. I think they probably should, but I hope they don't. The last thing I'll say before I get into the main part of this episode is taking Alex Anthopoulos' most recent comments. Okay, I don't know if you guys saw this. The most recent events into account as well. His comments about probably outfield and pitching. So anyways, my best bet is that the Braves are going to prioritize those two, outfield and starting pitching. And again, probably doing it on the trade market more so than the free agent market. It doesn't mean that they won't jump to another opportunity. Like if suddenly a opportunity to improve at shortstop were to happen, maybe they do that. Maybe they jump at that. But again, I think most of the Braves' action is going to involve trades, or if they do go for free agents, it's going to be guys way at the lower end of the market, that are not going to be very costly. So the challenge is the Braves are still relatively prospect poor when it comes to making trades compared to other teams. They have prospects they can trade, but they don't have a lot of super valuable prospects that they can just go and, blow somebody away. Like, for instance, Garrett Crochet, he's been tossed around. I go into baseballtradevalues.com and try to make trades between the Braves and the White Sox for Garrett Crochet. And I'm like, they don't have, if you're just trading for prospects, which is what the White Sox want, the Braves just simply don't have enough. They don't. You can't even get to the number legitimately to go get Garrett Crochet. So I actually don't think the Braves are going to be in on him at all just for that fact. Sorry to break that to you, but I just don't see it. So, all right, the following trades that I'm going to try to make, don't get mad at me. I mean, you can get mad at me if you want, but the following trades reflect this sense, right? That the Braves are somewhat prospect poor, so you can't go out just for anybody and everybody. I'm trying to be somewhat realistic in matching these up. So again, I'm using baseballtradevalues.com to construct each trade. Many of these trades might be considered unlikely or outside of the box or even a bit wild or crazy to some of you guys. But they're at least rooted in reality in terms of matching up player values, to construct legitimate trades. Okay, so you might argue that no, the Braves don't want that guy, or that other team would never trade that guy. You could be right, but most of the guys I'm putting out there have at least been mentioned in trade rumors, and I'm trying to give the opposing team a realistic return. I'm also trying to take into account these teams' needs. So in previous episodes, I've mentioned guys that I would target, guys that I would like the Braves to trade for or whatever. But I have not gone into in-depth, like constructing trades and trying to create legitimate trades that are fair to both sides. So that's what I'm doing in this one. Again, some of these get a little crazy. Others I think are probably much more likely. But the point of this episode, having some fun with this stuff. And hey, who knows? Maybe the Braves do make one of these trades or something similar with one of these teams. Okay, so let's get into it. My very first trade is with the Tampa Bay Rays. So in this trade, the Braves would get Brandon Lowe, who's making $10.5 million this year. He also has a club option for $11.5 million in 2026. He's been basically the Rays' full-time second baseman, but he has played some left field, some outfield. So in this one, he would be the Braves' left fielder moving forward. And then the Braves would also acquire Zach Littell, a starting pitcher, kind of a mid-rotation kind of piece. He's only making $6 million, which is crazy cheap for that kind of guy. He will be a free agent after 2025. Okay, so the Rays would get back Hurston Waldrop, Nacho Alvarez, and Bryce Elder. Obviously, Waldrop and Alvarez would be the bigger pieces for them to acquire. Elder, the Rays might just be happy with somebody filling in the back end of the rotation or being a depth piece for them. So let me go into my thinking here a little bit more. The Braves fill their starting pitching need. They fill their left-handed outfield bat need, and they do it for $16.5 million in 2025. This is a very good value. Lau can still be also valuable as a backup infielder if you were to have an injury anywhere. The Rays, why would they do this? They're always thinking about payroll, but especially now with their stadium was damaged during the hurricane. And so it's just totally unknown as to what their financial state is going to be this offseason. They haven't made it known that they want Brandon Lowe to remain in Tampa, but just because they say that, I don't know that I totally believe them. Maybe it is true, but I think this is one the Braves and Rays could match up on. All right, number two. This is one of my crazier trades. I'll just say it out loud before I start it. This is the Braves and Red Sox getting together. So in this one, the Braves would get. Hang with me here for a second. The Braves would get Trevor Story, who is of course shortstop, and Franklin Arias, which is an 18-year-old shortstop prospect. And with this, the Red Sox would also send $24 million with the Braves. This is pretty much a salary dump for the Red Sox getting rid of Trevor Story. The Red Sox would get Orlando Arcia because they would need a shortstop. Joe Jimenez, remember he is injured this year, but would be back next year, so they would take on that money, and then and that's basically all they're getting. So they are getting a lot of relief in terms of the Story contract. That's the big thing. It's mostly a salary dump by the Red Sox, but they're sending some money back for the Braves, so they're not taking on a crazy amount with the Trevor Story deal. So, okay, again, stick with me on this one. I know it's a little outside the box. Even after losing out on Soto, the Red Sox are looking to commit huge amounts of money to compete with the Yankees. The Yankees just, sign Fried. There are reports that the Red Sox want to get Corbin Burns. And the Red Sox would, I'm sure, love to get out from under the Trevor Story contract. To me, this is a very similar situation to Chris Sale. Now, would they want to do it with the Braves again when Sale bounced back and won a Cy Young? I don't know. But again, they get financial flexibility back by getting rid of Trevor Story, who has basically not been able to stay healthy at all for the Red Sox. for multiple years. So it's very much a Chris Sale kind of situation, but from a position player standpoint. Obviously, in this one, I'm not going to tell you this is my favorite trade that I'm mentioning, but here the Braves would take on more risk, right? The risk is Trevor Story's health. Can he stay healthy? He's not getting any younger. I think he's 33. So maybe they don't even bark up this tree, right? Maybe this is unrealistic. But to me, this is an example of this is a player that most teams and maybe his own team has given up on and don't value at all. But if he stays healthy, Trevor Story was a tremendous player in Colorado. I know it was Coors Field, but he was a tremendous defensive player. His other metrics were good, even if you lower some of his power numbers to account for Colorado. He would, if he could bounce back and give you a couple, reclaimed years, then he could be a very valuable player once again. So it's a lot of risk, but potentially if he stays healthy, it is a huge upgrade at shortstop. And then in this deal, I'm also getting an 18-year-old shortstop prospect to sweeten the pot for the Braves. And the Braves could use all the prospects they could get here. So it's just an idea. Okay. My third trade is another outside of the box one, and I bet some of you are really not going to like this one. But here the Braves would get Brian Wu, young pitcher, incredibly talented pitcher from the Mariners. They would also take on left fielder Mitch Haniger's 1-year, $15 million contract. He's a bounce back candidate. He's been injured as well. You're only getting 1 year from him. So, if he doesn't work out, you can move on from him after 2025. And then you would also get shortstop prospect, 19-year-old Ty Pete from the Mariners. Okay, so you're getting a lot back. Now, Haniger doesn't have any value, right? You're taking him on, which reduces, the value the Braves are getting. But Brian Wu is really the big-time piece here. But who would the Mariners get? This is where you guys are probably not going to like this. The Mariners would get Ozzie Albies and also third base prospect David McCabe. So let me start here. There are many reports that the Mariners are still trying to reduce payroll around the edges while also still trying to improve their offense, especially in the infield. Second base is a particular need for the Mariners. Haniger, again, I think he is a good bounce back candidate if he can stay healthy. And again, if he doesn't play well, you can drop him after 2025. Meanwhile, the big prize for the Braves here would be Brian Wu. You have to give up a big-time player to get someone of this caliber, but the Mariners are very pitching rich and offense poor. So I think this kind of swap makes some sense. Ty Pete, I mentioned him. He's an athletic shortstop prospect with high upside who just had a really good year in A-ball. Again, he's 19 years old, so he's a ways away, but he's the Mariners' 11th ranked prospect. Now, Ozzie. Ozzie is on an incredibly affordable contract through 2027. And while this would continue to be very valuable for the Braves to keep him, it's also valuable for other teams, especially teams that are cash strapped like the Mariners. They also need a second baseman, like I mentioned. So yes, it would be painful to see Ozzie go. We just saw Max Fried go. This would hurt as much or more to me. But, Ozzie's had a lot of injury issues. He hasn't been able to stay on the field as much. It does reduce his value, obviously, if he continues to get injured. So I just wonder if this might start to open up the Braves brass to decide, hey, maybe this is a good time to move Ozzie. And then, just very quickly, McCabe, he's primarily a bat. He might be a DH or first baseman ultimately. But if his bat comes around, again, the Mariners are looking for offense. So you throw him into the mix as well in this deal. All right, trade number 4, the Braves and Rockies. All right, so in this one, the Braves get outfielder Nolan Jones and outfield prospect Benny Montgomery. So Nolan Jones was 4th in Rookie of the Year voting in 2023. Then he struggled and had some injuries in 2024, pretty much a lost season for him in 2024. Benny Montgomery is a 21-year-old outfield prospect. I think he was a first-round pick by the Rockies a few years ago. The Rockies get Hurston Waldrop. Okay, so this is a little bit of a simpler trade here. The Rockies, okay, why would they do this? Well, they do things very strangely. I will say that. Admittedly, this would be strange for the Rockies to jettison a talented young outfielder in Nolan Jones after one down year. But the Rockies always desperately need pitching, and they can't get it on the free agent market. No free agent pitcher wants to go to Colorado. So a talented pitcher like Waldrop with this wipeout splitter, it might entice them to do a deal like this. Nolan Jones hasn't been healthy yet in his young career, which does make him undervalued. He had a 137 WRC plus in 107 games in 2023. And he's an average defender. Now, he's in that massive Colorado outfield, so I wonder if that kind of hurts his numbers a little bit. But he's a generally average defender. He's controllable through 2028, so that's very valuable. I wondered, like, is he another Jared Kelenic? I don't think so. I think he had much more success in 2023 than Kelenic's ever had at the big league level. So I think he's better than him. But it's just about him staying healthy. You're also getting Benny Montgomery in this deal. Again, talented young outfield prospect. He's a speedster, great fielder, and actually has a decent upside with the bat. His value has gone down a little bit due to injury as well in the minors after he was picked in the first round by the Rockies in 2021. But he had a nice 2024, so he's showing some promise. And again, if the Rockies are trying to find a talented pitching prospect, then maybe this is something they would do. All right, trade number 5. This is the most complex trade in a way because I'm doing a 3-team trade in this one. So the Braves are going to be involved with the Rangers and Twins in this trade. So here, the Braves, now this is a big one, okay? Get ready for it. The Braves get shortstop Carlos Correa from the Twins and outfielder Adolis Garcia from the Rangers. The Rangers would get A.J. Smith-Shawver, and the Twins would get Drake Baldwin and first baseman Nathaniel Lowe from the Rangers. Okay, so in terms of the Rangers, they need pitching. They're also trying to dump a little bit of money. They've talked about that as they have put a lot of money into that team over the last few years. So trading Garcia and Nathaniel Lowe, both of them have been talked about in trade rumors. More recently, Carlos Correa has made a lot of news, and the Twins are willing to consider trading him, not necessarily looking to trade him, but considering it. And they're pretty cash-strapped as well. The Twins here are getting Baldwin, of course, a Braves prospect, catching prospect, and Nathaniel Lowe, first baseman. Both of these are team needs for the Twins. Okay, so to me, a lot of this makes sense. Of course, taking on Carlos Correa and his massive contract would be pretty questionable for the Braves. So let me get into that. So Correa's health is one of the keys to this even being an idea. And I admit it would certainly be a little outside of the box of Alex Anthopoulos' MO, which is why it would be particularly shocking for a move like this to happen. I would expect the Braves to try to restructure Correa's deal, which is a pretty complicated deal. It has a lot of vesting options after like the first 4 years. It goes all the way through potentially to 2032 if all of his options vest. That is his age 37 season. So right now, Correa is owed about $200 million if all of the vesting options were to vest, which is unlikely. So I suggest if the Braves made the move, they could offer to redo his contract, maybe 7 years, $176 million, all guaranteed. And that's $22 million a year. Maybe you go a little higher than that for a shortstop, but with it being all guaranteed versus, the money that's not probably likely to vest, I don't know. Maybe he does that, maybe not. But given his volatile injury history, he may be happy to do that. He may be very happy to be in Atlanta, and he was on a very winning team in Houston. Maybe he would be happy to be in Atlanta and have that situation. So in this deal, the Braves also receive Adolis Garcia. I mentioned him in my previous episode as a potential target for the Braves. He's another volatile player, but very high upside, and he's still in his prime years, maybe on the back end of his prime years. He was a very late bloomer, but if you restructured Correa's contract, these two players would add about $32 million to the Braves, $30 to $32 million to the Braves payroll. This is the Braves paying up a little bit and going over that CBT number. And they would still have to address pitching. So they're really leaning into their position players and improving their offense in this scenario. Again, the Rangers would reduce payroll by trading Lowe and Garcia, and they would receive the Braves' top pitching prospect in Smith Shawver. The Twins would address two of their major needs in catcher and first base. They would significantly reduce their payroll, which is important to them. It makes some sense, but do I think this deal is likely? No, I actually think it's much less likely that the Twins trade Correa this offseason. Okay, Braves-Cubs trade. This is another one that I've actually kind of mentioned in the past, but I'm going to put it on paper and try to make it realistic. The Braves would get Nico Hoerner, put him at shortstop. He makes $11.5 million in 2025 and in 2026, so you get him for 2 years. Cody Bellinger makes $26 million this year. And then I'm also saying that the Braves would get $15 million from the Cubs to make this deal happen. So $15 million spread out. Bellinger has 3 years of control remaining. That would turn him into a $22 million player. I'm playing with that number $22 million because we know that no Brave makes over $22 million. It's their magic number for some reason. So I'm trying to turn Bellinger also into a $22 million player with that money. So because the Cubs are sending money to the Braves, they have to get more in return. So the Cubs would get Drake Baldwin, Jared Kelenic, and David McCabe. Drake Baldwin, of course, is the big name here. I've already used him in a trade. I'll just say, and I've already said it to you guys before, I love Drake Baldwin. I hope he doesn't go, but and I would hate to see him go in this deal. But the Cubs are looking for catching help big time, and Baldwin is one of the best young catching prospects in the minors. By some measure, he's the third best catching prospect in the minors right now, and he seems to be pretty much major league ready. The Braves would have a shortstop and a left fielder to plug in. Hoerner is a contact bat, a great base runner, steals bases, a very good defender. Bellinger is a solid outfield defender, and he can also play first base if there was an injury to Matt Olson. So all being told, adding these two guys would add about $28 million to the 2025 payroll. Again, that's if the Braves are receiving money back from the Cubs as well. And I will just mention, there have also been reports that the Cubs are desperately trying to trade Bellinger or Seiya Suzuki. So Bellinger is making more of the headlines, but Suzuki is probably the better offensive player. And he's a righty bat. Again, the Braves are saying they would prefer lefty, but he's a righty bat. He's a slightly worse defender than Bellinger in the outfield. But Suzuki might be just another guy that the Braves could look at. All right, my next trade, the Braves and White Sox. But yeah, I told you guys, I'm not trying to trade for Garrett Crochet, even though he's a tremendous pitcher. It would be pretty exciting to see him in Atlanta. I just don't think they have the prospect capital for that. So in this one, the Braves will get Luis Robert and $8 million in return. The White Sox would get Nacho Alvarez, Luis Guinipa, David McCabe, and Jared Kelenic. All right, so when healthy, Robert is a star player. He had a tremendous 2023 season, but that's basically the only year that he's been healthy. So what will getting away from the White Sox organization do and getting to Atlanta do for a guy like Robert? I mean, it's unknown, but I think it's very likely he could blossom. It's a risk, but if he's a bust, his contract, you can opt out after this 1 year. If he plays really well, you can accept his 2 remaining years on his contract as a team option. So getting $8 million from the White Sox could soften the financial strain for the Braves in 2025, allow them to do a little bit more, and it helps the White Sox get a little bit more of a prospect return. The White Sox have said that they want position players, and that's the challenge and the difficulty too of trying to get Crochet. You just can't get there with what the Braves have. You can get there for Luis Robert, and that's what this trade is structured to do. The Braves don't really have many top prospects. Here, I'm holding on to Drake Baldwin. You could trade him here as well. But to me, the White Sox actually might prefer to get more players than just Drake Baldwin or Drake Baldwin plus one other prospect here. All right, my next trade, I've got two more, guys. I've got two more. The Braves here would trade within the division. They would trade with the Marlins. So the Braves would get Jesus Luzardo and Jesus Sanchez, the two Jesuses. Luzardo is making $8.6 million next year and has one more year of arbitration remaining. Jesus Sanchez, an outfielder, is making $3.2 million and has 2 more years of arbitration remaining. So you get a little control with both of these guys. The Marlins would get Drake Baldwin, Jared Kelenic, Hurston Waldrop. These guys are showing up a lot in my trades, and Cal Conley. So this trade doesn't blow out the budget for the Braves. That's one of the benefits. You would still have money to address the bullpen, to address other needs. Jesus Sanchez, outfielder, he's an upgrade to me compared to Kelenic, though still a volatile player. He's an average defender. He has a great arm. He has tremendous power. I think he hit a 500-plus foot home run this past year, or maybe it was just the longest home run of 2024. He has huge power, but he has a ton of swing and miss as well. But all of his baseball savant stuff, if you go to his page, if he were to cut down on his swing and miss and on his strikeouts, he could be a really, really good player. And so, yeah, you might just be dreaming on him. He might never figure that out. He's 27, so he's not super young. But I do still think he is an upgrade on Kelenic. You know, he hit 252 last year. He had 18 home runs. Both of those just basic numbers are better than Kelenic. But the big piece here that you're getting is Jesus Luzardo. Absolutely would slot in very nicely into the middle of your rotation. And, you know, maybe you could sign and extend him. But if not, you still get 2 solid years with him. So that is definitely valuable. The Marlins, by the way, they just traded Jake Berger to the Rangers. They could use all the help that they can get, and I think they're still in full rebuild mode. Baldwin would be a huge get for them. They've been for years trying to solve their catching issues. You know, and why would they take Kelenic? He's got 1 extra year of control compared to Sanchez, and you know he still could turn into something, right? He still does have some promise. So that's almost like a swap for Sanchez and Kelenic. By the way, if the Braves only wanted to go after Luzardo, if you take Sanchez out of it, then I think they could maybe keep Baldwin and you give up Nacho Alvarez, Hurston Waldrop, and Kelenic instead, and maybe could still make that deal happen. All right, my last trade. The Braves get Kyle Tucker. Yes, I want to bring him up. Kyle Tucker, he's making $16 million next year, and then will be a free agent in 2026. The Astros would get Drake Baldwin and A.J. Smith-Shawver. So, you know, you give up really your 2 best prospects, at least in terms of value, the 2 best prospects to get 1 year of Kyle Tucker. So that is expensive for sure. But look, Kyle Tucker is an excellent player. If you can get him, I say you do it. He might be a 1-year rental, but there's no guarantee of that. He is from Tampa. He is not a Scott Boras client, so maybe there's some more willingness to be extended. It is not unreasonable to say that Kyle Tucker is a top 10 left-handed bat in all of Major League Baseball. He is a tremendous hitter. He had 3 straight 5-WAR seasons. He managed 4.7 WAR in 2024 in only 78 games. So he fractured his shin on a foul ball. It took him out for a while. But guys, 4.7 WAR in 78 games, that's more WAR than any position player for the Braves had all of last season. So he is a tremendous bat. You can imagine him hitting home runs in and over those right field stands and you know, the chop and all that. I mean, he has been on a good team for his entire career. He's used to winning. So I think this may be the best fit of any position player available on the market for the Braves. Of course, the caveat is he's only signed for 1 year, so he might be a rental. The Astros, why would they get rid of him? They're in a difficult position. They have a lot of these great Astros players coming up to free agency. Bregman this offseason, Tucker and Framber Valdez next season. You just can't keep them all, right? You have to choose which players to bring back and which to let go. Now, I would choose to keep Tucker, and I would let some of these other guys go. But it seems like they're in a position where Tucker may be one that gets let go. And so if you're not going to re-sign him, then you try to trade him and get something out of him. It could turn out to be a Juan Soto Yankees 1 year situation if the Braves were to get Tucker. But who knows? Again, he's from Tampa. If he falls in love with the Braves culture, and he's somewhat close to home, maybe he's amenable to sign a long-term deal. And I like taking the chance. I really do. It's a steep price. Again, these are two guys in Baldwin and AJ Smith-Shawver I wouldn't want to see go, but it would excite me a lot to get Kyle Tucker to Atlanta, and see what he could do in that outfield and in the middle of the order. All right, guys. Well, that was a lot. I know, a lot of different ideas. We'll see. We'll see who the Braves target. Part of the idea of this episode was just to throw out some names and try to be realistic of what they cost the Braves to go get them. And a lot of these names, again, have been mentioned in trade rumors. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had fun with it. Please comment. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, and maybe some of your ideas as well. If I didn't mention somebody, mention them in the comments. So I appreciate you guys listening to another episode of Save the Braves. I'll talk to you soon.